Welcome back, folks. We've got a really exciting evening here today with Nuno. Nuno Ferreira is, I think, one of the few genuinely fully European clinical psychologists that's around at the moment. Portuguese in origin, which is also where he did his clinical psychology training. He then went on to do his PhD at Edinburgh, and then subsequently became a lecturer at Edinburgh University, and is currently Associate Professor of Clinical and Health Psychology at the University of Nicosia in Cyprus, which is where he's coming in from this evening. Nuno is obviously a leading light in the ACT field, but I think one of the things that is particularly relevant and useful for all of us at the moment in connection with ACT is that he is one of the very few people that has looked quite specifically at ACT in relation to general medical conditions. So he's had a particular interest in long-term conditions like diabetes, etc. But he's obviously got relevance within the current context with COVID. And so, Nuno, we are all ears, really. I know that we've only got 15 to 20 minutes with you, but I'm sure we're also bursting with questions afterwards. So I'm not going to say anything more. I'll put things over to you. Welcome, Nuno.
Thank you very much, Paul, and I hope people can hear me well. I can see that I am unmuted, so hopefully that this will go well. So what I'll do, I'll just go to the. So Julia, would you mind letting me share the screen so I can present the slides?
Mute myself, and I'll see if I can allow you to share the screen personally. Waiting room. Share screen.
Sorry, folks, just a couple of
yes.
seconds.
What I'll try to do, because I want to keep it on only host, but I'll make your host, Nuno, if that's okay.
Right.
Yeah? So I'll do that. Make host. Yes.
Okay, let's see. Here we go. I think it's go. Okay. So hopefully, let me just put the presentation on. Oh,
yep.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's working.
It's working. Okay, great, excellent. So, well, first of all, very good evening to everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for what I hope will be, a brief catch up on how some of the concepts that we usually work with in acceptance and commitment therapy can be useful in this during this COVID pandemic crisis. So, as Paul said, I'm an associate professor of clinical and health psychology at the University of Nicosia in Cyprus. I've been involved with ACT for over 11, 12 years now. So I've been through everything in terms of the training and being a trainer myself. So and doing most of my research is all ACT based. So it's something that it's it's part of my genes by now. So what I would like to talk about today is really how can we use some of the tools. We're not going to go into a lot of depth and detail, but hopefully there's something here that could be helpful by the end of the evening. So, I'm not going to obviously spend too much time going through what COVID-19 is. So just the very, very briefest of introductions. So it's a virus that is from the corona family. It causes this infectious disease that for most people tends to be either mild or people don't even present any symptoms. However, we do know that about 1 in 20 people will need to have some sort of special care and go and potentially go into hospital. And we all keep hearing bombarded on the news everything about potential mortality rates and all of that. And it's serious enough because it's highly contagious that governments around the world have had to do very exceptional measures. A lot of it because we don't have any known treatment or vaccine yet, at least that's been shown to be effective. So all of these lockdown and restriction measures have sort of popped into our lives out of the blue with the appearance of this virus. So what can acceptance and commitment therapy do for us? And today, what I'll be doing is I'm going to be walking you through something that's really useful that was actually created by Russ Harris, who is probably one of the best communicators of acceptance and commitment therapy in the world. So full credit to Russ for coming up with this very handy sort of map of what we can do that's sort of consistent with acceptance and commitment therapy in the face of COVID. So we have these initials, face COVID, and we'll go through. So I'll give you a bit of what my interpretation is of Russ's face COVID map. So without further ado, so starting with the F, and this is something that's very crucial in ACT. So focus on what you can control. Now we know that COVID itself, or the measures as we mentioned, so things like the lockdown measures or the sort of life-limiting measures that we've been going through, can cause quite significant physical, emotional, social reactions. People will have impact also in terms of economical stability. So there's loads of things that sort of been imposed on us very suddenly, and this obviously is likely to bring a lot of unpleasant or distressing feelings. So things like fear, whether it's for yourself or for others that are close to you, anxieties, anxieties whether they're related to your own physical safety, whether they're related to your own emotional safety, regarding your economical stability, things like frustration because of the limitation, uncertainty, not knowing when or if this is going to end, reactions like sadness and anger, a lot of it related to things like isolation or having to sometimes spend a lot of time in a confined space. And when these things come up, our minds will go and do what our minds like to do. They'll try and problem solve their way out of it. That's what we've been programmed for millennia to do. So as good human beings that we all are, our minds will turn to, things like prediction. So probably a lot of people wondering, when is this going to end? What can I do? If I go here, what will happen to me? If I do that, what will happen to me? Or try to problem solve, maybe if I wear a mask, maybe if I wear gloves, maybe if I do this, maybe if I do that, there's loads of this going on. But at the same time, there's obviously a lot of things like rumination. So some people struggling with, anything from the onslaught of news that, it's basically everywhere all the time. You'll see it. One of the things I notice, for example, is I can see it, for example, even with my son. In the midst of his cartoons, you have constant messages for social distancing, washing your hands. So it's present everywhere. So it might, for some people, it might become a bit too much, and it might sort of feed this sort of feeling of rumination, constantly having this on their mind. It can feed the worrying around this issue. Now, the thing is that, when our mind starts doing these things like trying to predict, trying to problem solve, trying to sort of ruminating and worrying, a lot of what this leads to is to either more worrying, more anxiety, but also because we're basically just keeping it alive all of the time. So we're fusing with all of these things. But at the same time, whilst we're fusing with this, one of the things that we're doing is also disconnecting to what's happening right here, right now. We're disconnecting from other people. We're disconnecting from relationships, because we do get sort of all consumed. And that in itself can bring about new problems, new issues that we didn't count on. So focusing on what you can control, what can we actually control? Well, one of the things that we can control is how we behave right here and now. And it's really difficult sometimes, because and a lot of people start going, well, but I can't shake this anxiety. This anxiety is getting too much. What if I can't stop worrying? Things just seem so out of control that I really can't switch off. So for that, one of the things that we can do is what we usually say in ACT. We can try and drop anchor. And what do we mean by drop anchor? So imagine that it's like you're sailing a ship, and what you're doing is just basically sort of stilling the ship a little bit. And one of the ways that we can do that is using 3 very simple processes. One is acknowledging your thoughts and feelings. So whatever your mind is giving you, whether these are distressing thoughts, feelings, memories, worries, see if you can take a stance that's more observing in nature rather than engaged in nature. So we always have this saying in ACT, see if you can take the scientist stance. So where you're observing these experiences in a way that might be a bit more dispassionate. And one of the ways that we can sort of train that sort of stance or perspective is doing something very simple like labeling your experiences. It's the whole thing. I am anxious has a completely different power from something like I'm noticing anxiety. I'm worried has a different power that I'm having the thought that this is worrying. So when we do that, we are just by labeling our experiences, we are creating this sort of distancing where we are actually observing what is this experience that's appearing to me right now. The other thing in terms of acknowledging thoughts and feelings is also the context in which these occur. So first of all, notice that, what's happening right now is not normal. So there's an element of it of why would you react normally if these are abnormal circumstances. So there's an element of, obviously this is bound to happen. If this was a normal occurrence, we would be accustomed to it by now, but it's abnormal. There's loads of things here that are unknown. So whatever our minds are giving us in terms of thoughts, feelings, and memories, these are all valid experiences. They're not necessarily bad, good, neutral. They're valid experiences because it is a reaction to something that's completely new. But within that, there's also an historical context. So Some of these reactions might also trigger some memories. They might trigger some patterns from your own past, from your own habits. So even things like, you know, your own history might be useful to bring about in terms of noticing what the context is right now. So in your own history, you know, are some of these reactions that you're having, are these out of character with you? Are these, you know, are these surprising? So if you notice how you've reacted in the past to similar circumstances or to things that have a similar nature to it, you know, is it so strange that you're having a similar reaction right now? So these are, again, just things just to keep in mind, and keep in mind what the context is for all of these thoughts and feelings. Now, after you've been able to sort of observe and take this stance and observe not only the thoughts and feelings, but the context in which they are occurring, you know, it's also important to get a little bit out of here and a bit more here in our body. So coming back to our body, and, you know, again, keeping in mind that there's this physical presence here. And this physical presence might need a little bit of grounding so that you can notice what's happening right here, right now. Again, if we want to focus on what we can control, our behavior right here, right now, we need to notice what's the motor of that behavior, and the motor of that behavior is our body. So some very small touch-based type of things that we can do to sort of reconnect with our body, because it's very easy to just be all up in here and forget that we have all these dangling bits, you know, that take us where we are, where we want to go, that you know, enact our behaviors. So basic things like noticing your breathing, just noticing. It doesn't have to be, you know, some sort of Zen meditation, transcendental thing. Just noticing, inhaling and exhaling. You know, just notice this thing that happens automatically and bring your attention to that. Bring your attention to your body and how this is occurring. Things like noticing your body posture. You know, how are you sitting? Where are you sitting? How does that feel? How does it feel? You know, the different bits of your body that are pressing against the chair or pressing against the table. Notice, for example, how your feet feel when they're pressed against the floor. Even doing things like, you know, trying different body postures, see how that feels like. So really noticing how your muscles react to different body postures. Very brief thing as well, you know, even things like, you know, just pressing your fingers together, or you know, or gently stroking your arm or something like that, just to, again, re-engage with this thing that we call a body, and that is here and now. So as we do this, I mean, again, this is not a way of distracting yourself from your own cognitive and emotional experiences. So it's as you are acknowledging all of these experiences, again, acknowledge as well that these experiences also occur in this thing that we have called a body. And then let's see if we can engage with what we're doing, you know, whatever it is that you were doing. And, you know, by doing it could be anything like any form of activity, even a form of inactivity could be seen as doing something. So whether you're, you know, whether it's watching TV, whether you're preparing a meal, whether you're trying to do some exercise or something like that. So see if you can notice and engage what it is that you're doing. So ways to bring back your focus to what is actually happening right here, right now, can be, you know, using this very basic 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 type of exercise. So as you're doing it, you know, try to notice 5 things that you can see around you. Try to notice 4 things that you can hear around you. 3 things that you can feel with your hands, with your body around you. 2 things that you can smell, or 1 thing that you can taste. And this way, we're basically just sort of connecting everything. We're connecting what's happening here and acknowledging it and looking at it. We're connecting with this thing called the body, that is how we enact our behaviors. And then we're connecting to what it is that we are actually doing, but fully connecting. So not doing things on autopilot, doing them with some sort of meaning and intention. So this takes care of our face part of facing COVID. So we're focusing on what we can control, and we're bringing ourselves to the moment so that we can actually start doing the things that we can control. In terms of what we do, a lot of things. One of the things that we usually talk about in ACT are about committed actions. So committed actions are usually the type of behaviors that we do in the service of something that is important for us. At the moment, there's some of these actions that are, again, gently imposed on us. So anything from these COVID-related actions, whether it's hand washing, social distancing, or limiting some of our activities, these are all actions that at the moment are useful in terms of keeping us safe. So they have. There's a value there. There's something important there in terms of keeping us healthy. But at the same time, what else is important? So what else is of value during these times? And this will be different for different people. So it could be anything from looking after yourself. Whether you're trying to keep fit and engaging in exercise and keeping yourself active, whether it's noticing this as an opportunity to change things like your diet and do a bit more of healthy eating, or even treat yourself, do a bit of more unhealthy eating and bake loads of delicious cakes. It could be something like seeing this as an opportunity to connect with your community and with people that sometimes you might have not connected with. So anything from doing things for others that might not be in a position. So we've been seeing a lot of that across the world of whether it's from frontline workers, selflessly giving their time and putting themselves at risk for our benefit. But smaller gestures like people doing the shopping for people who might be on a vulnerable risk group, people checking in on each other. So loads of things that we can do that can give sort of meaning to our actions. Another thing could be connecting in different ways. We are certainly socialized to connect to each other in very specific ways, and again, our history will tell us what are the preferred ways that we have of connecting to others that are meaningful to us. This is also an opportunity to see if we can find other ways that we can connect with the people we love. And we've been highlighted, whether it's things like this, like Zooms and all of these tools that we have nowadays. But it could also be through things that are simpler in nature, but retain that function of showing care and love for other people. So finding what is it that's going to engage you in these behaviors it's going to be really important. It's going to be really important because, again, like I always say, doing things, doing things that matter, it's not always easy. And a lot of times, doing things that matter, whether it's in the face of COVID at the moment, but or just in regular life, when you are doing something that's important for you, you're also opening up to things like the potential of failing at it. You're also opening up to embarrassment, ridicule, because if you are doing something with commitment, if you're fully engaged with it, if you're doing something that's valued to you, it's going to be, there's a sort of an on-off quality, that when we do those things, we're fully committed, we're fully on to it. So, it's easier to get hurt as well, but it's also easier to notice that, when we're doing it, we have that capacity to follow something that is a passion for us. So when we engage in these actions, we need to be able to open up again to difficult feelings. It might be that I might try to connect with someone that's important for me, and I'm doing it, for example, via one of these virtual avenues, and it's frustrating because it doesn't feel like it does normally. It feels like something is missing. Again, if I get hung up on this feeling that this is not normal, how much am I going to be able to connect? How much am I going to be able to enjoy the connection with the person that I care about? It could be, again, opening up to anxiety that, it might be important for me to do something in my community, but that might bring up some anxiety. For example, am I exposing myself? Am I exposing other people by engaging in these activities that feel really important for me? So there's a lot of things that can be brought up when we do engage with things that we care about. And again, as I said, as we do this, we are putting ourselves in a vulnerable spot. So, we also need to make room for, things might not work out as you intended at the beginning, and that in itself might bring about, self or other criticism. So for this, as we open up, we also need to see if we can open up to some self-compassion, and see if we can bring that sort of gentleness that we would bring if we saw someone else struggle with some of these difficult feelings, some of these difficult experiences, and see if we can bring those to ourselves as well, so we don't fall into that sort of loop of self-criticism. So in terms of, we talked about committed actions and things that are important for us. And these are, usually connected. When we talk about these in ACT, we always mention values, which are things that drive your life. It's, again, things that are important for you, the things, as I usually say, what would you get out of bed for, in a way. There's lots of things that we can check in with us at the moment. To try. These are just some example questions of how we can connect to our values. So, are there any kind, caring ways that you can treat yourself as you go through this? So something that's more about self-care. What can I do for myself that shows that I care for myself? How can I treat myself? Things, what sort of words can you bring to yourself? So again, that sort of gentleness, that sort of self-compassion, what sort of kind deeds can you do for yourself or even for others? Things like, noticing if other people are struggling, if other people are suffering, what can you do to sort of, again, bring some sort of a treat to them? What if you can, what if you can do something for them? What would that be? How would that look like? Again, keeping in mind, it doesn't necessarily need to look like what you would normally do, but if we can keep the sort of the same sentiment, how could we share that sentiment that I see you, I care about you, I notice that you're suffering, here's me doing something to try and address that. The same way in terms of your community, what can you do? How can you contribute to the well-being of your community? Whether it's, going outside and making some noise tonight, especially if you're in the UK, just to show appreciation for the NHS workers. Whether it's, as I said, whether it's just saying hello to your next door neighbor, what is it that you could do for your community? And things like, what can you say and do that will, if you think about, in a few years' time, after, hopefully this is all done and dusted, and you want to look back at what you did and what your role was during this whole crisis, how would you like to see yourself? So how would you like to, it's almost like, how would you like to be remembered during this crisis? So these are all things that we can sort of check in within ourselves in terms of what can we do, what's really important for us, what drives us at the moment. So finally, two very sort of simple and sort of fairly obvious things. So, identifying resources. So what's available in terms of support, keeping in mind, no matter how isolated we might feel at some points, what else is there? Family, friends, health services. There's plenty to choose from. There's plenty to, so a lot of it is, it's that first step of asking and being able to ask for help if you feel that this is becoming too overwhelming. Another thing is where to get information from. Keep information or try to gather information from reliable sources. So whether it's the WHO, whether it's the European Center for Disease Controls, these are reliable sources that have no stake. So, a lot of times keeping a bit of a diet from news and from other sources of information might be ideal, so that we get more facts and less opinions. So finally, of this acronym of Face COVID is the D, which is really just, remember the basic things of, keep disinfecting, keep hand washing, keep distance, at least for the moment. And again, physical distance, not emotional distance. Keep your hands away from your face. Wear protective gear whenever that's reasonable. So this has been Face COVID. So it's an ACT perspective on what we can do during these times of crisis, and it's equally applicable to people that if you're a counselor, a psychotherapist, a psychologist. This is equally applicable to the people that you work with and to yourself. Keep in mind, we're all human beings. We're all going through this together. So it's equally applicable to all of us. So that was pretty much what I had to share with you tonight. And I've left there the link to the original piece by Russ Harris. So hopefully Julie and Paul will be able to share this with you guys at the end. It's a very useful resource. It's free, so I highly recommend it. So over to you, Julia.
Thank you very much, Nuno. And what I wanted to say is, if you could send me this presentation, if you're happy to share it with our viewers, we will absolutely share it with them. Thank you very much. So we probably will run for a few more minutes. So if you have questions, guys, please feel free to type them in the chat box, and Nuno will choose and answer them in the next few minutes.
Yeah.
So yes, there was one question. It's now already sort of gone up in the chat, but I will repeat it. I think somebody's asked how focusing on your body is not a distraction. How is it different to trying to find a distraction?
Well, again, I mean, it's not a distraction, because we would be using that in tandem with, again, acknowledging our feelings and fully engaging in what we're doing. So, you know, the whole purpose of noticing and connecting with our body is, again, just noticing. It's almost like noticing, here's another tool that we have at our disposal. If I'm going to engage in something that's meaningful, that's important for me, I will need these tools to be able to do it. If I'm doing it just on autopilot, how much am I really engaging? So again, just bring back a little bit of attention, not full attention. So as I said, you know, we're going to be splitting our attention into different things. We're going to be splitting our attention into our inner experiences. We're going to be splitting our attention into our body, and we're going to be splitting our attention to what we are doing, what we're engaging, what the context is.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a question from May 1.
Okay, so what would you suggest for a client that cannot label feelings and feels disconnected with the body and breath? Well, it's going to be one of those things, you know, slowing down is going to be key. A lot of the times, you know, people struggle with identifying certain feelings or certain experiences, because you know, it's very easy to sort of you know, when things are going from one to another, or they might be stuck in the loop, it might be difficult to sort of, you know, get that distancing. So a lot of it might be, you know, might take a little bit longer, and might take, you know, a little bit of, you know, baby steps towards getting to recognize your feelings. So might start with things that are a bit more concrete. So if noticing your breath is too, you know, it's too much for you, or noticing your body and engaging with your body is too much, let's try an object, you know, just basic, you know, grab a pen, look at the pen, describe the pen, notice how it feels in your hand, the color of the pen, how it smells, you know. So basic things that are less threatening, but they still retain that same function of connecting with our senses, connecting with our body, and just noticing and just sort of training the aspect of noticing what we have in front of us right here, right now.
Thank you. Thank you. There's mainly thanks and appreciation for your great presentation, Nuno, which is lovely, lovely to read. So what I wanted to say, just have you found any more questions? I think it's mainly thanks and
yeah.
Fantastic and great presentation. Well, I will repeat again that we are running 17th on 17th and 18th of June, we are running a 2-day ACT introductory course. And obviously we will not be flying Nuno to London, don't worry about that. What we will do is we are showing our latest recording when Nuno did it live in London, and Nuno will be live with you answering all the questions throughout 2 days. So it's a great opportunity. We've done it many times now. It's a great opportunity actually to ask everything you want about ACT and get the latest information from the presenter. And somebody described it as having a meta presenter who is actually listening to himself and correcting himself and giving the up-to-date information. So it's really a very interesting way of doing it. So it's 17th and 18th of June, obviously on SDS website, which you all know now. And the next session here on Thursday at 7 will be live from the USA. Dr. Jeff Riggenbach, who is a specialist in CBT and personality disorders, difficult clients. He will be talking about dealing with difficult clients in the times of pandemic, lockdown, and so on. So that will be next Thursday, and as always, we will send you an email with registration details on Thursday morning, like we did today. Thank you very much, Nuno, for coming to join us. It was lovely to see you, and stay safe and well, and the same to your family. And to all of you guys, stay safe, stay well, and see you again next Thursday. Bye now. I'll put it on the gallery view so I can see you all. So bye, thank you for joining us again, and see you next Thursday, I hope. Bye now. Bye.